The Cleveland Browns have hired Ken Dorsey to be their new offensive coordinator, and digging through Dorsey's time in Buffalo and time with the Carolina Panthers, this should hit. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, and I appreciate you all who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd keeps getting higher in numbers. Don't miss out on the phone. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your best bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Ken Dorsey it is, your new Cleveland Browns offensive coordinator. As many of you listened to yesterday, I put out an episode, and just about as it launched is when the news broke that the Browns did indeed agree to terms with Ken Dorsey. Ken Dorsey, the man, obviously you go back to his Miami days, there's probably an argument to be made for Ken Dorsey to be maybe considered one of the best collegiate quarterbacks to ever play. Underdog story, had all the height, had all the size, never had the wow arm, was part of an absolute contingent of just massive talent at the U. The Ohio State fans know how that one all turned out, obviously. But you bring in Ken Dorsey, and there's a lot of aspects here that going through numbers, going through his time in Carolina, going through his brief tenure as offensive coordinator with the Buffalo Bills, that really, for me, I think this may turn out to be a really, really good hire. First off, obviously, all the time spent with Cam Newton was Cam Newton's quarterback coach, Cam Newton's MVP year in Carolina. Some of the Carolina regime moves to Buffalo. Ken goes along for the ride. And, Ken is quarterback coach for Ken Dorsey. Ken is quarterback coach for Josh Allen. Then some of the contingent from Buffalo moves south to the New York Giants, and Ken Dorsey becomes the offensive coordinator. And if you heard Jason Lloyd speak, and we're going to use some of Jason's words here today in segment 3 as well, some of the contingent goes to the New York Giants, obviously leaving an opening for an offensive coordinator. Josh Allen's relationship with Ken Dorsey was really tight, was super close. And through maybe some of the polling from Josh Allen, and again, this may, somewhat from Jason Lloyd. Again, I've gotten many asks, no relation. I'm the better looking one. Jason's a great guy, does great work. Just kidding, Jason Lloyd. But for Josh Allen, obviously he had the relationship, and, they wanted to, give Ken Dorsey the opportunity to go to the next level. We'll get to how it phased out, obviously, in segment 3 in Buffalo. But Dorsey comes in here, and obviously no stranger to the Cleveland Browns organization. Unfortunately, he is, you guys know, he's on the jersey. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you bring him in here, and now obviously his work with quarterbacks, Cam Newton, obviously Josh Allen, now Deshaun Watson. Similar types of players, of course. Cam Newton, a monster-sized quarterback. Josh Allen, a monster-sized quarterback. Deshaun Watson needs to stop playing like a monster-sized quarterback and run when the availability is there, and take the opportunity and be smart about it. But he comes in here, obviously a ton of experience on the offensive side of the ball, working with quarterbacks. So this is, Deshaun Watson is certainly a big part of what Ken Dorsey, needs to get. What I think was trending towards that way here in 2023, I think Deshaun Watson was going to have a pretty good year for this team. As we all know, of course, ended prematurely and on the highest note of Deshaun's tenure on the field with the Cleveland Browns. So you bring him in here, and obviously that is a big part. Of course, DTR, you cannot forget about this. Your job as quarterback coach, and I'm not saying that is going to be Ken Dorsey's duties as well. He is offense coordinator. We'll see if they hire a quarterback coach or if Ken Dorsey, will work unilaterally with Kevin Stefanski as far as, running the offense, and Ken will maybe take quarterbacks as well. But DTR is obviously a huge thing that you're going to need Ken Dorsey to do. Coach him up, get him right. And we don't know how the season would have ended for DTR. But you bring it in, and the numbers speak for themselves for the Buffalo Bills offense. And we're going to break that down, obviously, a little bit more here. That part we'll do in segment 2, and why I think it's going to be a nice fit for the offense and certainly for the defense. Ken Dorsey has coached in games that the Cleveland Browns aspire to get to. That is huge in the Browns. And if you remember last year, and the Everydayers know, I spoke a lot about the guys they were bringing in. They brought in guys who either won Super Bowls, had experience going deep in the playoffs. Those were a lot of guys the Cleveland Browns brought in last year on the defensive side of the ball. Now with a coach like Ken Dorsey, you're bringing in somebody that, late January was always the expectation. That is, what the expectation was for the Buffalo Bills. And that was the type of franchise they won for the last few years, before they moved on from him this year. And again, we'll continue on that. But you get this guy who had the pedigree as a player. He was a dominant player at Miami. If you want to say he had the benefit of playing some really, really great talent, I'm not going to take that away from that would be a solid counterpoint to make. The 34-game win streak in Miami. The guy was a winner. He was a winner in college. He was a winner as part of a coaching staff in Carolina. He was certainly a winner as part of the coaching staff with the Buffalo Bills. And for the Browns, at that 11-6 mark, you're trying to get to the next level. You're trying to win your division, which helps you try to maybe control your own destiny when January comes, when the playoff comes. Ken Dorsey has been a part of this. Ken Dorsey has been around this. And he comes in, and as far as who's calling plays, I've heard 12 different people, and I'd say it's an even split to this point. Kevin Stefanski likes calling plays, and I'm not sure Kevin Stefanski is ready to give that up. And as head coach, I don't think anybody's going to force him to give it up. And for what he did this year, playing with 4 quarterbacks, and the fact that this team went 11-6 and went to the playoffs, I wouldn't say there's a reason Kevin Stefanski has to give up play calling duties to this point. We'll see how it all works out. And I will say Ken Dorsey 100 times, and I'm sure there will be a John Dorsey. But this is the new and improved Dorsey effect. The full Dorse, as my good friend Nathan Zagara would say. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Everybody, stick around for the ride. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets, parlays. My favorite, guys, 3, 4, 5 scenarios, anytime touchdowns. These are all things I love. And look, I don't bet often, but the Super Bowl, and obviously this year, sadly, no Browns in it. So, no dog in the fight, so to speak. I'll be on the betting train. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W, or 2, or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win the Super Bowl 58 in Vegas, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and of course, so much more. New customers join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL. I am Jeff Lloyd, your host here of Locked On Browns, and I appreciate you guys all for listening to Locked On Browns and making it your first listen every single day. If you're not part of the everyday crowd by now, make a new plan, stand, and subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Now, digging through the numbers and getting a little bit deeper into this, and, mostly 2022. And we'll get to the problems for 2023 for Ken Dorsey and the Buffalo Bills here in segment 3. But the Browns needed a way to take their passing game to another level. And I think watching the Joe Flacco, I don't even know what to call it, the one night open, kind of like when it was like a quiet concert, you know what I'm saying? When you got to see a musician, it'll always be a lovely and fun thing to talk about the Joe Flacco affair, whatever it may be, with the Cleveland Browns. But what the Cleveland Browns saw is that their passing game is capable of big numbers. Their passing game is capable of 300 yards consistently. Their passing game is capable of getting vertical. We saw it the first time in the entire Kevin Stefanski regime. The Cleveland Browns were able to get consistently vertical in the passing game during the brief time Joe Flacco was the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. That is something that they don't want back. That is something they absolutely have to have back. Yes, they ran the ball poorly, but could you just imagine the way the Cleveland Browns were throwing the ball vertically over the last 5 weeks of the regular season? And then imagine having your full offensive line, having running backs running behind one of the best run systems over the last 4 years in the NFL and Kevin Stefanski's system combined with offensive line coach Bill Callahan. Imagine Nick Chubb getting to get carries behind a passing game that was able to throw for 300 yards consistently and go 50 yards numerous weeks in a row to any receiver, 50-yard completions. These are things you hear about. These are things you see in other teams, in other offenses. You do not see these with the Kevin Stefanski regime. I love Coach. You guys know. I think he's done a fantastic job. But there have been points where his offense has not been able to show that consistently. But we got to see it. It was a December to remember, kids. And that is one thing that Ken Dorsey can bring to this team. Josh Allen in 2022. Now, keep in mind, in 2022, the Buffalo Bills were 13-3. If anybody remembers, obviously, the DeMar Hamlin game that never got played. That's why the Bills only played 16 games that season. Josh Allen, in those 16 games, threw for 4,253 yards. So you figured he was on a pace to throw for 45 and a half, if not more. Josh Allen had a completion percentage of 63.3. We know all about what Josh Allen can do. We know the deep passer that Josh Allen is. There is also this part to look at. And this is, what you probably are getting excited about when you want to see how would Amari Cooper do with Ken Dorsey bringing some influence in here to this Browns team, to this Browns offense, and working with Kevin Stefanski. Stephon Diggs in 16 games in 2022 had 1,429 yards. Monster number, 11 touchdowns. Receiver number 2, Gabe Davis, almost 850 yards and 7 touchdowns. Worried about how David Njoku's going to fit in all this? Well, Dawson Knox, and you can look in 2023 and see the production between both of the Buffalo Bills tight ends and see just what David Njoku could do here. But Dawson Knox was 48 for north of 500, 6 touchdowns himself. Just between 2 running backs, Devin Singletary and James Cook, 59 receptions. 59 receptions from 2 running backs. Not too shabby. Not too shabby at all. How did they run the ball in 2022 with Josh Allen as the offense coordinator? With Ken Dorsey as the offense coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. Devin Singletary, main ball carrier, 4.6 yards per carry. James Cook, 5.7 yards per carry. Zach Moss, 5.4 yards per carry. Those are Coach Stefanski rushing numbers. Those are Cleveland Browns rushing numbers under the Kevin Stefanski regime. Also a little tidbit. Trying to find that running back that might fit the Cleveland Browns and the awkwardness that will be in 2024 to how much Nick can be a part of it. Well, Zach Moss just played with the Indianapolis Colts this last year. Had a really good year. Also played with a really, really awkward situation where Jonathan Taylor was suspended because they couldn't get all that nonsense. Where I don't even know suspended, but it was ineligible, whatever it was. Crazy scenario. then was hurt for a while. Zach Moss was, the weeks that he was the starter, was the leading man for that team. So somebody that could maybe fit into this team and the awkward position that will be the Cleveland Browns running back room in 2024. Zach Moss just did something similar with the Cleveland Browns, with the Indianapolis Colts in 2023. Now, Devin Singletary. I've brought this name up a couple of times, and I don't know if the Houston Texans will let him go or they won't find a way to bring him back. But Devin Singletary would also be another guy who has been a rotational running back at times and a guy who has found his way to become the number one option. Certainly was the number one option closing out the season, as we all know, with the Houston Texans, and we certainly saw and dealt with firsthand. So connecting some dots there, obviously something to watch for come early March. So you want and you need for the Browns to improve offensively in the passing game, and you would like to see the passing game be more consistent to the output and production that we got, again, during the Joe Flacco December to remember. But you also want to see this running game get back to what we've expected for the first 3 years of the Kevin Stefanski regime. And obviously, Nick Chubb getting injured was a huge part of that. Obviously, losing a large part of your offensive line was a huge part of that. But Ken Dorsey comes in here and has success as an offensive coordinator with a running game, with a passing game. I am not going to talk about what Josh Allen did running the ball because I don't want Deshaun Watson to be a featured runner. I want Deshaun Watson to say there is open grass. I will go take it, similar to Brock Purdy in the AFC Championship game. By the way, congratulations, San Francisco 49ers and Kansas City Chiefs. So you look at this, and the Browns are not going first-time offensive coordinator. That would have been the case if it was maybe Jared Johnson from the Houston Texans. The other one, obviously Brian Johnson, somebody they were looking at. So you're looking at two offensive coordinators that were, basically moved on from the staffs they were currently on. And there's reasons why the Eagles didn't bring Brian Johnson back. And those would give you some pause and hesitation as far as bringing this guy in and giving him an offense coordinator gig. The Ken Dorsey being moved on from the Buffalo Bills has a little more meat to it. And if you didn't see Jason Lloyd speak today, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And what Jason's words were, give me, some less pause and hesitation to bring Ken Dorsey in here. And kind of the reason that I think I'm excited for it. And I think that this is going to be a pretty unique fit where Ken Dorsey, Kevin Stefanski, and it might not be right away, but this could go well to where maybe Coach Stefanski just becomes a general head coach. And eventually Ken Dorsey becomes the guy who runs the offense for the Cleveland Browns. We're going to continue your latest Locked On Browns. Don't anybody go anywhere. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Jeff Lloyd, your latest Locked On Browns. Ken Dorsey is your new Cleveland Browns offensive coordinator. I appreciate you all come out and make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd keeps going up in numbers. Don't miss out on a party. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Now, I had mentioned, obviously, Jason Lloyd's words here. And, I had said earlier that, part of the promotion for Ken Dorsey to offense coordinator was due to his relationship with Josh Allen. And Josh Allen personally endorsed, personally vouched, and, coaching staff, as great as Josh Allen is, he speaks, you should probably listen. So they did accommodate him in 2020, obviously led to a 13-3 regular season. Uh, Cincinnati Bengals came to Buffalo. Didn't work out so well in the playoffs, of course. And then they were coming back for year 2. Now, as Jason Lloyd tells the story, the Bills were trying to change Josh Allen here in 2023. They realized how integral, how important he is to their team, no doubt. They wanted to try to take some of the Josh Allen out of the Josh Allen experience. And they'd gotten to the point where this team was struggling, 500 football. And there were weeks where you looked and Buffalo Bills were on the outside looking into the playoffs, needed a lot of help to get in the playoffs. And sometimes there's a firing for firing's sake. And you just, hey, we got to change the vibe of the room. Maybe everybody's too comfortable. We need to get everybody up on their toes. Sometimes some anxiousness is good. And they had Joe Brady. And they decided to end the Ken Dorsey and Josh Allen working relationship. Ken Dorsey was not the one who was trying to take Josh Allen out of Josh Allen. That was the Buffalo Bills brass. So Ken Dorsey, who was basically trying to do what he was told to do, and then it started to backfire on the team. So they decided to sever the relationship between Ken Dorsey and Josh Allen and sever the relationship between Ken Dorsey and the Buffalo Bills. Cut off their nose, maybe to spite their face. Obviously for the Bills, it completely worked out. They went on to win the AFC East. They went on to the playoffs. They went on to win a playoff game. All while Ken Dorsey was now on the outside looking in. Now Ken comes here, fresh life, fresh, do-over, starting from scratch. But the burden is real. The Browns have a $233 million quarterback that only played half of the season in 2022 and only played half of the season in 2023. All signs are that everything we have heard from Cleveland Browns brass when they're speaking about Deshaun Watson is that medically he is trending towards a 110% full recovery and should be able to participate in OTAs and should not be hindered as far as, any of the required offseason work. I'm not sure how that's going to, affect it, if it will or it won't even affect what Deshaun does to get himself ready towards OTAs, training camp, etc. And until we hear otherwise, I have to believe he is on track to handle everything he needs to handle for himself. But Ken Dorsey is now trying to relight his coaching lamp. And Deshaun Watson, and, I think there's people who are harder on him for his play this season than I was. I wasn't. I just wasn't. And even when you heard Deshaun talk the other day and saying, I've been notoriously a slow starter within games, within seasons. And you go back to week 1 against the Bengals. And then right before halftime, he put together a nice drive. And all of a sudden, second half was nice. Tennessee Titans, same type of thing. Baltimore Ravens, 14-14 in the second half. So there are some things Ken Dorsey, if he just listens to Deshaun Watson speak, can try to work on and try to work with Coach Stefanski and work in unison with Deshaun, with everybody. Well, what can we do to get Deshaun Watson to be somebody that comes out of the gate a little bit more, that jumps out of the gate, becomes a fast starter? It helps. It certainly would help, obviously. It would certainly help for Deshaun Watson's numbers. It would certainly help for the consistency of this team. You had your franchise quarterback tell you and critique him his own self. And so if I am Ken Dorsey and I am Kevin Stefanski, that is the first thing I'm doing. And it's not about scripting plays or not scripting plays. There's a reason, and I told you last episode why the plays are scripted. But maybe it's starting to have quarterback have a little influence and say, these are some things that we really think we can do this week against this team. This is where we can expose them. All right, of these 4 plays, which one of these do you want in your first 5? Which one do you want to be your first passing attempt? These are things that they can do. Ken Dorsey needs to basically get his brand back up. Deshaun Watson just needs to get out there and be able to play a full season of football because he's taken a lot of criticism for missed time. Some of it is his own doing in 2022. Absolutely. 2023. It's an injury. What can you do? The guy's out. He's out. But still, until he's out there on a consistent basis, week in, week out, and performing like the player I believe he still is, there will be this in between Cleveland Browns fans and Deshaun Watson. But either way, the Cleveland Browns have hired Ken Dorsey. I gave you a bunch of reasons why I think this is good for the offense as far as the running game, as far as the passing game, and things I think that will be good for Deshaun Watson. Two guys kind of maybe feeling a little down on themselves, going to try to relight the lamp for each other together with the Cleveland Browns. I am Jeff Lloyd, the host here at Locked On Browns. I appreciate you all who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, if you in by now, get on a bus, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.